Hello, everyone. I'm Can Kucukgul from the University of Texas at Dallas, and today I'm going to be talking to you about our joint work with my advisors, Özalp Özer and Shoqian Wang, which is titled as Engineering Social Learning, Information Design of Time-Lock Sales Campaigns for Online Platforms. Now, what do I mean by a time-lock sales campaign? Let me very quickly show you with a few examples. In a time-lock sales campaign, platform invites a third-party seller to sell its product for a limited amount of time and at a fixed price that is set by the seller. Customers of such platforms often face uncertainty about the value of the products, mainly because of the lack of physical showrooms in the online environment. As such, platforms face the challenge to maximize their sales under the three key features of online time-lock sales campaigns, which are customer skepticism about the value of the products, limited amount of time, and inability to maneuver the price. So, to overcome these challenges, we see platforms sharing some historical purchase data made by the previous customers to upcoming customers in an attempt to leverage social learning. Here's how this works. Each customer has a bit of information about the value of the product. Therefore, their purchase decisions conveys these information to the platform. However, customers cannot directly observe each other's purchase decisions directly. Therefore, through selective information disclosure, platform has the ability to strategically influence upcoming customers' valuation about the product. In this particular example, we see a time-lock sales campaign from Groupon. Now, along with the highly discounted price and how much time left to claim the deal, platform is also showing us some historical purchase views information on the product. Notice that the information shown in that department is being updated dynamically. Please also note that these selling horizons in these time-lock sales campaigns are pretty short, ranging from few hours to few days. Therefore, it is highly unlikely for platforms to accumulate new reviews or ratings on the product. Now, not all the platforms are applying the same principles as Groupon in their time-lock sales campaigns. Here, we see an example from Amazon. In their daily deals, they chose to disclose only how much time left to claim the deal without providing any information on the past purchase performance of the product. Whereas Wood.com chooses to disclose full-time series sales data, which is much more granular than what Amazon is providing. Now, heterogeneity and prevalence of such mechanisms naturally led us to ask, what is the platform's best strategy to provide information during the course of a time-lock sales campaign? Now, let me point out the main characteristics of such campaigns. A time-lock sales campaign is broadly defined by three key features: length of the campaign, seller set price, and a significant uncertainty that has been shared by the platform and the customers about the value of the product. We represent this uncertainty with a binary random variable v that takes the value of 1 for a high-value product and takes the value of 0 for a low-value product. We represent with v0 the perceived probability of the product being high value. Now, as far as the main modeling elements go, our base model takes the campaign parameters as it's given. We have deterministic customer arrivals, 1 per unit time, and to capture the social learning process, we endow each of our customers with private signals that are imperfectly indicative of the product's value and also reflects the customer's private evaluation of the product. 1 represents an optimistic signal, -1 represents a pessimistic signal. In particular, a high-value product is more likely to generate a high optimistic signal, whereas a low-value product is more likely to generate a pessimistic signal. Now, as a crucial feature of those online platforms, an arriving customer can only observe the message provided by the platform at the time of her arrival. Together with her private signal, decides whether to purchase the product or not. Platform, on the other hand, perfectly observes and records each of the customer's actions in its proprietary history, along with the messages that they have been provided. Then, having the goal of maximizing the expected revenue, designs and commits to an information provision policy, which maps a proprietary history into a probability distribution over the set of messages M. At this point, we are not putting any restrictions on the size of the message space. For the sequence of events, at time 0, platform commits to the information disclosure policy. Upon arrival to the platform, customer observes the message provided and together with her private signal, updates her belief about the value of the product and decides whether to make the purchase or not. She makes the purchase if and only if her perceived valuation exceeds the price she needs to pay. And in anticipation of how these customers will behave, platform wishes to maximize the expected number of sales by designing an information provision policy. As you can see, the platform's problem currently is a little bit abstract and poses two significant challenges for us to solve. Challenge number one is that we need to shrink the size of the message space. And challenge number two, we need to find an efficient representation for the platform's proprietary history. As of now, it's a complex object with increasing dimension as the campaign evolves. Now, to tackle challenge number one, we show that it suffices the platform to design its recommendation policy just by using three messages, which constitutes as recommendations: a positive recommendation, negative recommendation, and a neutral recommendation. A positive recommendation induces customer to purchase the product irrespective of her private signal. A negative recommendation induces customer to not purchase product irrespective of her private signal. And a neutral recommendation induces customer to purchase the product only if she has an optimistic view on the product. So in order to stay credible, platform needs to ensure these posterior beliefs are falling into correct regions, and in turn, customer will follow the message intended by the platform. Now, let me make a key observation here, which will be very important towards the end of the talk. Under a neutral recommendation, we see that the customer will follow her private signal. Therefore, in its purchasing decision, she makes the platform learn about her private signal. However, under positive and negative recommendations, which we frame as affirmative recommendation, customer's purchase decision completely conceals her private signal. Therefore, the private signal won't be learned by the platform. In particular, or in other words, mutual recommendation generates both an informational value and fiscal value for the platform, whereas an affirmative recommendation generates only a fiscal value for the platform. To tackle challenge number two, we showed that through a single dimensional summary statistics, which we term as net purchase position, we were able to capture all the payoff relevant information on the platform's proprietary history. This net purchase position basically is the difference between number of purchases and number of non-purchases made by the customers who receive neutral recommendations, and the platform's belief about the product's value is only depending on the net purchase position and can be calculated using this equation. So utilizing the results that we derived in the last two slides, we can then design, platform can design its recommendation policy with respect to the net purchase positions, basically by defining mapping from its net purchase positions to a probability distributions over three recommendations, I'm sorry. So with these recommendation policies, customers' belief about the net purchase position can also be calculated, which we represent with Z. And as a key contribution, we were able to reformulate platform's problem as a linear program in terms of the product of R and Z. In this linear program, the objective constitutes the expected number of sales. The first constraint gives us the belief evolution of the customer, which is a non-homogeneous random walk object. And the rest of the constraints give us the incentive compatibility constraints. So using the results of this optimal result of this linear program, we can then trace back the optimal recommendation policy using the Bayes rule. We represent with pi star the optimal objective value. And please note that one can also design this problem as a dynamic program by using the entire vector Z as the state variable. So let me give you a visualization on how the optimal recommendation policy looks like. Remember that we have three recommendations in the recommendation policy, three probabilities, I'm sorry, for each customer and net purchase position pair. So in these three panels, we represent the magnitudes of the probabilities of positive, neutral, and negative recommendations as color gradients, where darker colors represent higher probabilities. On the horizontal axis, we have the set of customers, and on the vertical axis, we have the set of net purchase positions. The triangular area shaded in gray reflects the net purchase positions that cannot be obtained by that particular customer. So as an example, let's take customer 40, and let's say the net purchase position turns out to be -20 for that customer. Then the optimal recommendation policy provides a positive recommendation to that customer with probability 0.26, neutral recommendation with probability 38, negative recommendation with probability 0.32. 36, I'm sorry, and 38 for the negative recommendation. Therefore, as you can see, the optimal recommendation policy is highly randomized and does not permit for an easy analytical characterization, and also will be challenging to implement in practice. Therefore, motivated by these observations, we asked the question, can we devise a heuristic policy which entails simple, minimal levels of randomizations while still reaching close to optimal revenue performance? For this purpose, we decided to study a subclass of recommendation policies, which we term as NA partition policies. In an NA partition policy, platform partitions the customers according to their order of arrival into two groups, a neutral customer group or an affirmative customer group, to exploit from the main trade-off between those two recommendations, right? As you might remember, a neutral recommendation generates both an informational and a fiscal value, whereas the affirmative recommendation only constitutes and generates a fiscal value. So in a NA partition policy, platform's task is to come up with the optimal partitioning of the customers into neutral and affirmative groups, and each neutral customer will only observe a neutral recommendation no matter what the net purchase position that she is facing, and each affirmative customer will be displayed an affirmative recommendation, which can be randomized between positive and negative recommendations depending on the net purchase position that they are facing. So let me give you an example NA partition policy with 5 customers, and net purchase positions are given in the vertical axis. Let's say the first customer has been partitioned as a neutral customer. As you can see, net purchase position can go up or down, and the platform will learn about the private signal of the customer. Let's say the second customer is partitioned as an affirmative customer. As the customer will follow the message intended by the platform won't learn about the private signal of this customer. Third customer as a neutral one, fourth as an affirmative, fifth as a neutral. In total, we have 3 neutral and 2 affirmative customers in this example NA partition policy. But what the optimal NA partition policy look like? Let's uncover that right now. As it turns out, the optimal NA partition policy has a very simple structure with only 3 parameters to be optimized, such that the platform partitions all the customers arriving up to a cutoff customer as neutral customers, and partitions all the customers arriving after the cutoff customer as affirmative customers. And for all the affirmative customers, the platform displays positive recommendations, fully positive recommendations for all the net purchase positions above a threshold net purchase position, fully negative recommendations for net purchase positions below a certain threshold position, and randomized between positive and negative recommendations for the threshold net purchase position, such that our example NA partition policy in the previous slide can be improved by shifting the neutral customers towards the beginning of the campaign and affirmative customers towards the end of the campaign. And for the affirmative customers, providing fully positive recommendations for net purchase positions above and double star, fully negative recommendations for net purchase positions below and double star, and positive recommendation with probability X double star to the net purchase position and double star. So in other words, optimal NA partition policy front loads the neutral customers and back loads the affirmative customers. Okay, for the last piece of puzzle, let me tell you the revenue performance of this NA partition policy, right? As it turns out, our NA partition policy performs really well, and the optimality gap, the average optimality gap that it has compared to the optimal objective value is 95% on average. Sorry, 5%. The optimality gap would be 5% on average. And in the worst case, the NA partition policy recovers 75% of the optimal revenue. Now, let me conclude my talk by giving our main contributions. We first design and formulate the information design problem of the platform as a linear program, and then through our device heuristic policy, which is easy to implement and simple to prescribe, we were able to capture 95% of the optimal revenue. So along with the long-standing streams of revenue management and social learning literature, our work also leverages and contributes to the recently evolved and fast evolving, recently emerged and fast evolving area of information design by extending the previous work into the dynamic settings. Thank you very much for your attention.